Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. MGTOW is kind of retarded for yet another reason, and that is that MGTOW men clearly don't understand the dynamics that underlie economic collapse. Economic collapse relies on men having a spine and standing up to government once the taxation becomes too extreme, whether that taxation takes the form of insanely high inflation, or extremely high rent prices due to quantitative easing, or sales taxes, or property taxes, or income tax. It doesn't matter what form it comes in. Taxation is taxation. And as long as men are too cowardly to use violence against the government, or en masse stop paying taxes, even though they'll go to jail for not paying, until men get the balls to do something like that, the government will not go bankrupt. At least not anytime soon, because the government will just steal more money from the people. And the perpetually rising standard of living means that the government always has more standard of living to siphon wealth from, thus making it so that it takes way longer for an economic collapse to happen than it took through all of human history. So the standard, in other words, also it means, tyranny can advance more and more. So the standard of living increases, which gets siphoned away, and the cowardice, men's seeming willingness to suffer any level of deprivation, which is what you see these days, these two things make it so that the collapse will be postponed far longer than any sane person could or would expect. And this will mean that the government has more time to increase the tyranny as well, like I said before, with more surveillance, walled gardens, I think that's what they're called, walled gardens like Chromebooks, self-learning algorithms, in other words, weak AI, and other things. This all makes it so that the government can force compliance and can always just cut the fat and fire more people as technology can take those employees' place, thus making government just as powerful but at a much cheaper price. MGTOW men act like the collapse is inevitable and that they can cause it or weather it just by going MGTOW. That is, go through the collapse, endure it, and survive it just by going MGTOW. I think obviously that makes it easier, but it doesn't, in a sense, but it definitely doesn't guarantee survival, not in any way, shape, or form. It is retarded to think that you can weather the collapse in America if you live in a city and can do so just by going MGTOW. That's fucking retarded. Equally retarded is thinking that you can cause the collapse without refusing to pay taxes, without using subversive technology like tails, without using cryptocurrency, without buying silver, without using violence against the government, etc. If you cannot cause a collapse, then you may never be able to cause one. Because of government's increasing strength due to technology. Either government is getting stronger or it's getting weaker. And even if America collapses, it could get taken over by China. So unless you're an anarcho-capitalist, you'll just be supporting the rebuilding of the government after the collapse. Even though behind the scenes, the U.S. government will be bending over for China and doing whatever China tells it to do. And then you'll be just as enslaved after the collapse, but without the possibility of getting rich by rising in the ranks in your own country. Only if you're Chinese will you be able to get rich in the world in the future. Or Israeli maybe, or maybe Russian as well. Because we'll be just as poor in the future after the collapse, but, all our wealth will instead of be going to, our rich people, they'll be going to, the Chinese rich people and the Chinese people. So, it's not like things will be better after the collapse. I mean, there's no guarantee of that. In fact, the evidence indicates that things will be way worse after the collapse. It may not be as dire, like, in grave danger of death any minute type of, bad after the collapse has gone through, but there will be, ongoing extreme poverty for, probably the bottom 70, 80, maybe 90% of people in America. Maybe 95 or 90, the bottom 99% of people will be really poor in America after, we go through the crash and then, we're China's bitch after that because America is not willing to fight. When Americans are not willing to fight their own government or not willing to fight their own tyrannical enslaved leaders, then their enslaving leaders will sell them out to another country if they have to. I mean, come on. Things are not going to get better after the crash, even if we can bring it about by going MGTOW, which I don't think we necessarily can. And even if it does, if we do have a collapse, who says that MGTOW caused it? You know what I mean? It looks like it's, going to happen anyway eventually. But like I said, things will probably be even worse after the collapse. Another thing I wanted to say in this video is that there's some proof that Joss Whedon is in the Illuminati, and that's the 3 triangles at the beginning of every issue of his 8-issue Buffy universe graphic novel called Fray. It's kind of old, but it's really good. You should read it. It's collected in graphic novel form, which is how I own it. So I'm not sure if it's the cover of each issue, well, because I never bought it, when it was coming out, or the first page of each issue, but it's something like that. Either the first page or the first cover or the cover of each issue has 3 triangles. And they're all in like a line, like they're pointing in one direction. 3 triangles is an Illuminati symbol. The outer triangles represent the sheeple, and the inner triangle represents the Illuminati. I know this because this symbolism is used elsewhere, such as the finger jewelry worn by Charlie XCX on the cover of her album Pop 2, and in the music video for the Lauren Gray song My Story. So this is evidence that either Carl Malign, who drew the art, or Joss Whedon are Illuminati, probably both. Also, especially considering in another of his comics, Buffy Season 8, the first volume of it called The Long Way Home. In that, you see, who was it? Ethan Rayne enclosed by 3 X's, 3 big red X's that were kind of like a cage around him. Why 3? Why not 4? If it's a cage, why didn't it have it a back? Why didn't it have it a 4th X in the back, edging him in on all sides, or a 5th one on top? You know, it was only 3 giant X's, 3 giant red X's boxing him in. It was like a dream sequence, you know. But yeah, so XXX equals 666 because X is the 24th letter of the alphabet. You know, 2 plus 4 is 6. I didn't come up with that myself. I think it was Faceless MGTOW who did. He had 1 or 2 good MGTOW videos. I really wish he had not deleted his channel, but yeah, I got that from him. And yeah, so now thanks to him, I know that XXX means 666, and you see a lot of XXXs in you know, TV shows and movies and all over the place, really. So yeah, you know, 3 triangles is another Illuminati symbol, and since, like I said, you see 2 Illuminati symbols in 2 different Joss Whedon comics, I think this makes it obvious that it's not just Carl Malign who's in the Illuminati, it's Joss Whedon as well. And it's not like his morality is all that great either, because, which makes it easier to believe that he's in the Illuminati, because, you know, he cheated on his wife with tons and tons of women for years and years and years. So, yeah. This has been Redshift. I hope someone got something out of this video. Peace trucks for promiscuous men, because they are literally the main cause of gynocentrism. It's quite ironic that MGTOW, a movement that claims to be opposed to gynocentrism, is actually causing an increase in gynocentrism by promoting the idea that men can and should and need to be promiscuous because of it being the only safe way to meet one's sexual needs without putting oneself in legal danger. Sure, the MGTOW monks are not increasing gynocentrism, but the MGTOW men who sleep with women and do so outside the bounds of a serious relationship are increasing gynocentrism. It's so ironic that MGTOW purports to be fighting gynocentrism when it's actually increasing gynocentrism. The bigger the MGTOW movement gets, the worse the incel problem will get. And the worse the incel problem gets, the worse the gynocentrism will get. Because gynocentrism is caused by the shortage of women due to the promiscuity of top men. And if it doesn't increase gynocentrism, then it will increase violence in society, as men in society start being extremely violent over the inability to get sex. Either greater gynocentrism or tremendously widespread extreme violence over the shortage of women. Those are the only 2 things that could possibly happen going forward. MGTOW's growth will cause one of these 2 things to happen, because yeah, maybe the bottom 30% of men are cowards who aren't going to fight back or use violence when they're turned into incels, not even if they're incels for their whole lives. But, you know, you turn 70, 80, 90, 99% of men into incels, you know, like, eventually you reach a point where you're turning the really smart, really aggressive guys into incels. Guys who have money, guys who have high testosterone, guys who have high IQs, and self-respect, and these guys will get extremely violent over, you know, being denied women. And you know, the incel problem will just grow and grow and grow until men fight back. So, yeah, it inevitably will grow until it is those high IQ, you know, large bank account, you know, good-looking, charismatic, aggressive, high testosterone, willing to be violent men. It will grow until those men are incels too, and then those men will get extremely violent. So yeah, it is inevitable that we either have massive gynocentrism in the near future, in the next 20 years. I'm talking way greater than today's gynocentrism. Massive, insane, simpish gynocentrism, or extreme violence on a wide scale. You know, MGTOW's growth will cause one of these 2 things to happen. Either way, it's not going to be a good thing. And to answer one of my viewers who asked what my problem with MGTOW is, I will say, my problem is with the fact that MGTOW is increasing gynocentrism, disempowering men, refusing to point out that the government is the problem, not women, MGTOW is also refusing to join together to more cohesively fight oppression, MGTOW is assuming a crash won't come anytime soon, or is failing to sufficiently prepare for a coming crash if they believe it is coming soon, Because if they were sufficiently preparing, they'd be forming communes. But they're not, which proves they're not sufficiently prepared for a coming crash, which either indicates that they don't really believe the crash will happen anytime soon, or they just delusionally think they're going to weather the storm living in a city, which is fucking ridiculous. That's insane. No, you'll probably be killed for your store of food and silver and stuff. MGTOW men are callous, short-sighted, selfish, petulant, vicious, hedonistic, cowardly, and are unwilling to truly walk away and form communes that keep women out and use live-in concubines that are shared among men in the commune, thus allowing the men to get sex without long-term relationships and without having as many women in the commune as men, and thereby also setting a good example for women, an example that will make women run to join those communes, and will give up all their rights to be able to do so. MGTOW is only sustainable if it forms communes and uses live-in concubines that are shared, like 2 or 3 men per woman, per one woman. Thus, that would not increase the gynocentrism problem, and thus would make MGTOW far less blameworthy. Plus, having communes would mean they'd be more able to protect themselves, which would also mean they're not being hypocrites or idiots in regards to the coming collapse. So, and they could save and sound money and proclaim the illegitimacy of all government and proclaim that anarcho-capitalism is the only thing that is valid because it's the only thing that is truly free, truly prosperous, truly peaceful, and truly devoid of the theft called taxation. This is really the only way to do MGTOW, with live-in concubines in communes, and live-in concubines that are far less than the number of men that are in the commune. This is really the only sane or non-male disenfranchising and self-protecting way of doing MGTOW. But that's not what MGTOWs are doing. So yeah, I have to criticize MGTOW because the way they're doing MGTOW is fucking stupid. MGTOW men are setting a terrible example for women by being promiscuous, by being statists, by being hedonistic, cowardly, selfish, vicious, and just generally immoral, as well as acting like the crash isn't going to happen by continuing to live in cities. MGTOW could be truly improving things, but it is refusing to do so. And so the question isn't, what is my problem with MGTOW? The question is, if you have half a brain, why do you not have a problem with MGTOW? Having been hurt by a woman, having been divorced, raped, or whatever it may have been, is not an excuse to be immoral or just, throw all of humanity under the bus. It's not an excuse to be unvirtuous. It's just not. The whole human race, all the innocent men who will be born in the next 50 to 100 years, do not deserve to suffer just because you, the average MGTOW man, wants to give up on the human race just because you were divorce raped. Maybe part of the reason many of these guys were divorce raped is because they're not very noble people. Maybe they lack compassion. Maybe such guys thereby set a bad example for their wife. I'm just saying that a truly good person does not throw the whole human race under the bus just because he himself was hurt. People of the past were hurt immeasurably worse. Their wives were raped or their kids were killed or whatever it was. Horrible things happened to them, and yet they still did not give up on the whole human race. There's a difference between, on the one hand, refusing to put yourself in legal danger, that is, grabbing your ball and going home, and on the other hand, in a petty, selfish, nihilistic way, not warning others when they're about to get hit by a car because you don't care about anyone because you've been hurt in the past. Or not even by the people who are going to get run over, but you were hurt by other people, so you're going to let those different people get hurt just because you don't care about anybody anymore. That's petty, that's selfish, that's childish, that's short-sighted, that's foolish, that's ignoble, that's blameworthy. Peace trucks for MGTOW men who lack nobility.